Hello, family and friends. Welcome to Family Movie Night. My name is Austin.
My name is Quinn.
My name is Autumn.
And we are here to talk about movies and have a good old hootin' time. So how the show works is every week we pick a movie and we sit around and we just talk about it, what we love about it, what we think about it, everything. And then at the end of the episode, one of the family members, one of the people here on the council, will select a movie that we'll talk about next time. So last week we talked about Inside Out, and it was my choice. So I chose Blade Runner 2049 as today's discussion. We will be running down 2049 and also talking about the original Blade Runner because it's hard to talk about a sequel without talking about the original. And we'll just jump right into it. So right off the bat, do we want to run down a little bit about it?
Yeah.
I will say this will be a spoiler-filled discussion. You'll benefit most if you sit, watch the movie, come back, and we'll talk about it. And you can join in the conversation, talk to us about it, let us know what you think, tell us if we're idiots, whatever you want. And let's go. I really just want to jump into like the heart of this movie because there's so much to talk about and figure out. So let's go with first kind of reactions or second reactions or where we're sitting with it right now today. Quinn, let's start with you.
Sitting with it, it's a masterpiece. I watched Blade Runner a couple years back. Didn't love it. Don't know why. Love it now. Love it a lot. The first one. Want to watch it again and again. It's beautiful. 2049. Love even more than I saw it the first time. Think it's a masterpiece. Think it'll age as the years go on.
As most things do.
We'll think it'll age. It's just gonna age really well, I think.
Maybe it'll just last 4 years and then die like Nexus 6. Am I right, you guys? Autumn, what did you think? What were your initial takeaway thoughts, feelings?
So I watched both of these movies in the space of 48 hours while very sick for the first time. I'd never seen the first one. I'd never seen the second one. Throughout my life, I had many people, including Austin, tell me repeatedly how great these movies were, the cinematic classics. So I knew going into it that I was going to be treated to a great experience, but I didn't know anything about them apart from the fact that they were like dystopian future movies about androids. I was like, they exceeded my expectations. I really liked both of them. I liked them both for different reasons, but they still felt like the same universe. I felt like the new 2049 was a perfect sequel to it, and I liked it for different reasons, but it didn't feel like a departure, if that makes sense. You know?
Totally. I think I've been a big fan of the first Blade Runner for a while. I love it. It's one of my favorite films ever made. It just like when I watch it, I'm just like constantly reminded about why I love film. It feels similar to watching Alien or the original Star Wars trilogy. Just these like 70s, 80s movies that just, to me, they just remind me why I love cinema and like filmmaking, and because you can see the care and the passion that goes into these things, and the world building in the first Blade Runner is insane. Like, it's kind of taken for granted, I think. At least I do, like, a lot of these, like, worlds, because we grew up with Star Wars existing and, you know, these big films existing. But you go back and look at Blade Runner, or that didn't really exist until Ridley Scott made it. Mm-hmm. And he had to make it and explain to people his vision, and it just comes to life. And I think 2049 continues that world just seamlessly. When I first saw 2049, I saw it opening night with Quinn, and I was a big fan of the first one, super excited for 2049. And I turned to Quinn and I said I didn't like it the first time I saw it.
And I was like,
Quinn was like, that was amazing, right? And I was like, I didn't like it. And I realized now it was my own, I was going in looking for the first one. Mm-hmm. And what I got was something completely different, and I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so glad they went that direction.
Well, because Denis Villeneuve has said that when they were making a sequel, and when he had the opportunity to direct it, he took it because he didn't want anyone to fuck it up. It's because he's a huge fan of it, and I think he said, and I think it would have been easy to, and I think I heard someone say this somewhere, but I think he understands. I think I was upset, but then I realized that he just understood Blade Runner more than I do.
Yeah.
Like, he just gets it more.
I mean, you've seen Arrival?
Yes.
Yeah, so like, I I love that. It makes a lot of sense. Like, because Arrival is also one of my not favorite sci-fis, but I really loved what he did with that film, and I love the story behind it. So it only would make sense that he could do this like seamlessly, especially with the sound. The sound in Arrival is like crazy, and same with 2049.
Yeah, which is interesting to tie it to Mandy, a film we talked about. Johan Johansson did that film. I think he did that after he was kind of let go from 2049.
Oh.
Because he did Arrival, he did Prisoners, he did Sicario, and then he was going to do this film, and then he left to do, he wanted to go a different way. He needed something different, so Hans Zimmer came in and Benjamin Wallfish came in to vamp it up.
Just to touch on that while we're talking about it, something that I noticed really specifically watching the first movie that I'm only realizing is different about 2049 is in the first movie, the score has a lot of like almost like jazz 80s elements, but done through synth. So there's a lot of like synth sounds that you could tell were like supposed to stand in for the saxophone that it would have been in a regular 80s movie. You know what I mean? And there even is saxophones in the score. But I felt like the new movie had a much more modern contemporary score where it wasn't so much like saxophones and like guitars. It was more like synth sounds like
Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
Great
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
the
my really
original
good impression.
score by Vangelis is like, I love it, and I think for me that's what makes the original. I like it like more. I prefer it to 2049, and it's kind of that kind of represents a really important thing where it is like this. It does have these weird like jazz influences and this like hard-boiled noir kind of feel.
Yeah.
Lots of like dark shadowy scenes, lots of rain, lots of like, Harrison Ford is just like such a great detective, and it's this great neo-noir cyberpunk detective story, and I love it. And I think 2049 is a bit more clean and a bit more polished and a bit more precise and perfect because Denis is a more precise director.
Yeah.
And I think it works for the story because I think because of the protagonists are different.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
I also attributed it slightly to the like the more clean feel of it is part of the world building, because in the 2019 setting of the first Blade Runner, things are like falling apart. But what we learn in the pre-movie text of the sequel is that things have been sort of getting fixed by this agricultural revolution.
By Wallace.
And so I gather things are cleaner because of technological advancements. Things are looking and feeling a little bit nicer because they are slowly working their way out of this pit and towards more of a clean technological future. So I kind of took that as like just the progression of the setting and less difference of the filmmaking, but it is regardless a choice in the filmmaker's like vision. So either way, it's true both ways. But I wasn't unbelievable or jarring for me because it felt like where the sequel could have gone, because it was 30 years later. So naturally, 30 years later, there'd be different technology and a different look to everything.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Something I didn't know, we talked about this last night, but I didn't know that, because you mentioned cyberpunk, I didn't know that the definition, because cyberpunk is the genre of do androids dream of electric sheep. So it's basically like the depiction of advanced technology in juxtaposition with social turmoil. So like a reaction to like novels in the 1950s and 1940s, which said that in the future there will be like a utopian like world. Whereas like even in both movies you can see that obviously it's not a utopia. It's awful. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. It's this, and I think that's the thing. Yeah, so the novel "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," which the original Blade Runner is based on, should put that out there. It is like this movie helped like create this cyberpunk vibe, and I love it. I think it's so cool, and like Alien is kind of potentially we can get into that a bit too. Also Ridley Scott, this like grungy, dirty, like the people who have been like kind of stepped on to create this utopia, and we're just seeing Earth, and we never go off world. We stay in like kind of like the shit of it.
Yeah.
And also like basically like the water, because Austin brought this up, I didn't realize this, because there's walls all around So like the water levels have risen. There's no trees. There's garbage everywhere. People like live in the garbage. In androids, because you've read some of androids, it's mostly, I think I read, it's more so about like the environmental impact, which is interesting that they still get that message across without it like being in your face. The environmental impact, all the other impacts of the world, but it's not like in your face. And I love how I always walk away from both movies being like, yeah, but what does it mean to be human? Like that's the biggest aspect. But yeah, we're faced with this like dystopian world.
Yeah. I feel like a book can more easily get across things like environmental impact via the way that the world is written about, but a movie needs to focus on the characters, otherwise it's just shots of environment. So I think it was a smart choice on their part to make it more about the humans and less about the world around them, and just show you the world around them, as compared to having these like long discussions about the environment, because it's very clear the environment is screwed up from just what you see and what you hear. So I think that's just like an interesting thing that they did to translate the book into a movie, is focus on the people more than the setting, and the setting will naturally, well, the setting is really focused on, of course, but like, I'm basically what I'm trying to say is, in a novel, it's just easier to discuss that kind of stuff than it is in a movie.
Yeah, and you kind of need to build it. Whereas in a film, you can just show that Los Angeles is covered in rain, and you'll be like, "That's not right.
Yeah,
that's bad."
Yeah.
And how everyone's dominated by huge corporations. Like this entire message of like, this is what will probably happen anyways.
Yeah, it's kind of,
which is
like that. There's
cool.
a few corporations that are just
Exactly.
running everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's already true to this day. So
Were those corporations like asked? Do you have any idea if they were like paid?
They must have. It must be product placement.
Because that's such a weird thing to ask
It's
a
ironic,
company.
isn't it?
Can we use you on our movie, pay you to promote you, but in a way that makes it seem like you've taken over the planet in a negative way? Like, it's not a positive promotion. You know what I mean?
But I guess maybe you could. I'm sure they would probably be like, "Yeah, you can show that you would still be around in Blade Runner. Sony's still kicking because you guys are great." Maybe that's how they do it.
I guess.
Harrison Ford still drinks Black Label, even in this, even in
this
shitty
world.
radioactive Vegas. So let's get into what stands out to you about 2049. Like, we were talking about the music, the visuals. Like, Roger Deakins won an Academy Award for shooting this movie. I think there's some unreal shots in it. It's kind of one of those. It kind of like fits that saying of every frame of painting. And like, you could pause this movie at any point and kind of make it a wallpaper or put it up somewhere, and it would be like
So
a
true.
still.
Yeah.
Like, every shot. I really noticed that this time. I mean, the Vegas stuff is, clearly that, but
Yeah.
everything. What did you think about how it's shot?
I have much to say. Do you have something you want to say? So something that I found very interesting about this one as compared to the first one is in the first movie, because it was shot on like older technology, different sort of VFX happening. There's a lot of shots of like the city, for example, where it's hard to make out exactly what's going on. You just know it's chaos. In this movie, it's like super ultra HD, and everything is a lot more visible. So a lot more of the detail comes through, and I found that wasn't a better or worse thing, because like I said, the chaos and like the ambiguity and the shadows of the first one is part of the feel. In this movie, I felt like there was just so much to take in all the time, which is an amazing thing because it kept me riveted. Because like we said, the plot's kind of slow, not in a bad way. It's just things unfold very like calmly in a way. There's never like a scene where like something like explodes or there's like heavy tension. A lot of the movie is like conversation and things kind of like flowing around, So the fact that everything is so visually pleasing helps keep you drawn to it, even though it's very quiet. I just like you said, every frame was worth studying. Everything was so interesting, and there's so much like subtext with what's being said. I noticed that there's so many scenes where the background is just like fog. There's a lot of shots in the very first scene where Ryan Gosling is in that like that farm area, and there's just everything is fog, and so it just gives you this feeling of like true isolation all the way throughout the movie, which I think every character is sort of feeling deeply is isolation, so it really helps kind of build that. And it's all these like subtle things going on with the cinematography that help build the world more. I mean, obviously there's that shot that is in like all the trailers, which is when he's in Vegas and everything is super orange. there's a reason that shot is so focused on that whole scene. It's so beautiful. One thing I noticed in the movie that I didn't notice when looking at it in trailers and such is that there's like a gradient going on within the shot too. Like it's not just like everything's orange, but like it goes from like a really nice yellow to an orange to like a deep auburn, then like a red. There's so many textures and layers to all of the visuals, which I just found
and the
so
neons.
stunning.
I love how they still had the neon like colors. I like also because going off.
No, please continue.
Going off what you're saying, I just felt very like, yeah, it almost like the filming of it makes you really, I was so zoned into the story and you're like so focused on the characters' faces, but there's just like this beautiful landscape behind them.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, like no matter it's even if it's just like kind of grayness, because a lot of the stuff like that isn't colorful is just like not colorful and just kind of like sad, but you're still like so zoned in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love that entire red sequence. It's beautiful.
There's something about the way both of these movies are shot that seems to be, I don't know if this is me reading too much into it. I feel like it's not because there's obviously a lot that they're trying to say. But I feel like there's this comment on how everything is so destroyed and dark and dingy, yet it's still beautiful just in a new way. It's beautiful in like a gross way. When you're watching the first movie, there's one shot that really stands out to me where the two of the main androids, the main villain Roy. And the other guy who's in the opening scene
in Blade Runner, the first film.
Yeah, in
Blade
the first
Runner?
one.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they're talking and then they're walking and then they walk away and then the camera pans over to a bunch of people riding bicycles.
Oh, yeah.
And like the shot didn't have to be that long, but they chose to for world building. And what I thought about that shot was super interesting is like how the world is like dark and grimy and shadowy and gross, and you can just like almost picture how it smells, but like those people are like riding bikes and having fun still kind of within the world. It kind of highlighted that there's still beauty and fun happening within this really weird dark world in a way. You know, people often ride bikes for pleasure. I don't know why those characters were riding bikes, but they could have just been
maybe
walking. It was a choice, right?
Going to the slaughter mill.
Maybe.
Well, I think the world is also like, yes, there probably is still fun, but I think it is a different society in that it's like hyper sexualized. And I think that comes from like this need and craving for connection that nobody has. Because obviously I'm sure that society also is like just zoned in on their own technology. And then also like all the like rich people and everybody just lives in space, so you already like feel like a garbage dumpster anyways, and you live in a garbage dumpster, and then you're like you have nothing, so you're like craving because there's just like sex everywhere. You walk in the streets, so it's just like this craving for
Like
connection that nobody has.
manufactured intimacy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Joy, the character of Joy.
Can we talk about the idea of replicants first before we get into Joy?
The idea of replicants?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Can I just because you said what stood out? You were saying what stands out to you most in the films. What stood out to me most is basically and broke my heart most is the idea that Ryan Gosling is like taught to dehumanize himself, is like taught to think he has no soul, but yet he has a soul. And there's that scene with him and Robin Wright where she literally says to, I don't know what the exact line is, but what is the line?
Well, she says. So he's tasked with. He finds out that there is potentially a replicant that gave birth, or there is, and there's a kid out there or a person out there, and that she basically says, kill it, kill whoever that is. And he says he's never killed something that's been born, and she says, well, why? And what's the difference? And he says, like, to be born is to have a soul. And she says, well, you're getting on fun with that one. He says, what's that? She says, a soul.
Yeah, and you can just like see his
K,
face.
sad.
Yeah, his face
Sad
is just
Gosling.
like so sad. So it's just interesting, like the moment that he starts to think like Deckard is my daddy, or like he thinks that he's the one who is born, he immediately like feels like he has a soul and feels like he is a person. And so I just felt like on the second watch, it was just heartbreaking. Like especially at the end when he dies, like it like killed me because it was like fuck, this guy like feels like he has no reason to live. And I feel like a lot of the people, even if they're humans or replicants, they all feel like they don't really have a reason to live. Like they're on this like just off, like they live in this dumpster of a world. Not saying that they all feel that way. It's just interesting, like to me, all the replicant, like there's no difference between replicants and humans.
Yeah. Well, I
To
think that's
myself.
I think
And I
that's
know
sort
that's
of what
Yeah, well,
the
that's
movie's
Blade
trying to
Runner.
put
That's
across.
yeah.
So
It's-
yeah, so that's kind of like, let's get into Kay a bit and let's talk about his arc and and him and what he represents for this overarching story of what it means to be human. I think that I love, because it starts with him believing he's not human, and then he's kind of given this hope that he is, that he has a purpose, that he's special, that he's real, because he's been told he's not. And then through that, he starts going off programming. He starts doing what Wallace says they don't do, but he does it. And then, of course, you're like, oh yeah, because he is the special one. He's not that. It's what. And then he finds out that he's not. But then he still makes the decision at the very end he gets basically asked, like, to kill Deckard by the rebellion. They say, kill Deckard. And he chooses to take Deckard and reunite him with his daughter, which I think he doesn't pick a side. He doesn't say, "Oh, I'm for replicants. I'm a cop. I'm Blade Runner." He chooses to reunite this family, which I think is the most human thing to do.
Yeah.
He selflessly gives his life so that they can kind of meet each other.
That's one of my favorite things about the movie is the fact that it sets it up like it's going to be this story of a replicant being more than just a replicant in terms of, like, he was born from another replicant, so he's the first of his kind, he's the special chosen one. And then it takes that away and goes, he was never the chosen one, but he was a hero and he was more human than anyone else in the story. And I think that was such a beautiful misdirection. I haven't seen something like that in a movie in a long time, where it sets you up to think this character is so amazing. I was super surprised. It sets you up to think that he's like something unique within his world, and then it takes away, like, the physical thing of what would have made him unique, but it leaves you with the fact that the character is still unique. Like, it's sort of a comment on, like, you don't have to be, like, born from this crazy place to be an amazing human. You know what I mean?
It's like if Pinocchio found out at the end that there were strings on him the whole time.
Yeah.
And then he decided
and
to
he
die.
never turned into a real boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but what is? I think it's a great.
Yeah, like,
because
what
does
is
it
a
mean?
real boy?
What means, like, what is it to be?
What is a real boy?
Like, what is it to have a soul? What is it to be human? Because he was told he wasn't. I guess it's like something to do with, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
I agree. But that was my thing. So you were going to go into Joy. I don't know if we can go into this now, but with Joy, I know you both think that she was just a mirror to him, that she's telling him everything. But my honest opinion is that I think that, like, the technology is so advanced that, like, she is her own person when he gets her that other...
The emanator?
the emanator. Like, I know that the technology is designed to give you everything you want, but I'm like, what's the difference between her and a replicant? I know that replicants are, like, present and real eternal beings in, like, physical world, but I still think that she was making those choices because the technology is so advanced that, like, why couldn't she?
Well, I guess maybe I misspoke last night, because I don't think what you're saying and what we're saying are mutually exclusive. She is a piece of technology designed to give him whatever he wants, but we're also meant to sympathize and love with a character. We're watching this movie, enjoying her presence and enjoying what she is for Kay. So I feel like even though within the physical reality of the world, she's just a piece of technology, it's like an even farther step into this discussion of, like, can these pieces of technology have souls? Because she doesn't even have a physical body, but we relate to her and we understand why Kay loves her. And so it's like,
Yeah, can she have a soul?
I mean,
guess
I don't know
the
if-
movie leaves you with that, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's
it still leaves you with that as well with her.
yeah, that's one of the things I loved about this movie is it took a lot of the questions that were unanswered or like ideas from the first one, and it, like, took them the next step. For example, in the first Blade Runner, there's that question, is Deckard a replicant? In this one, we know from the beginning the main character is a replicant, and then it uses that idea where it's like it furthers what we'd thought about the first one and does something different along the same lines. In the first one, it's like humans versus replicants. In this one, it's humans, replicants, and holograms. There's like a whole third option for us to discuss. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think my opinion on Joy is, like, what that last scene where he's with that giant hologram and she says, like, you're a good Joe, and she gives him the name Joe. I think it shows that, to me, that there is, and it's everything you want to hear, everything you want to see. I think that it is a little bit of she's telling him what he already knows, or what he wants, which doesn't make her not a real person, I guess, but it makes her, I think, an extension of him a little bit, because all she knows is him, and all she like I think there is something to be said about like the only person she interacts with is him.
Yeah.
That version, right? And we see that she like goes from being like a 50s housewife to like a party girl to like she's like adapting to be whatever he wants her to be in that moment.
Yeah.
That's like our introduction to her. And I suppose, yeah, so when she gets the Emanator, she's free of that, maybe?
Because she does change. She's like feeling the rain, and it feels like she's never done this before.
So yeah, so I guess she is like exploring. She is kind of breaking out of that.
Yeah,
I suppose too.
Like I get
like Rachel in the first one is. She finds out like she starts running away from Tyrell, and she starts her relationship with Deckard. So I guess it is kind of mirrored to that. So I can see the argument for it. I just think that scene at the end kind of reinforces to me that he kind of wanted to feel special. He was like feeling that all along.
I get that.
And wanted that.
Yeah. I agree with both, I guess.
Well, I think that both are right. I think that the thing about this movie and the first one as well is, like I discussed with you guys the other night, I feel like these movies aren't giving answers. They're purposely ambiguous because they want you to think about it. And so I think that, yeah, like Joy is a character with heart and emotion and choices that she makes, and it doesn't nullify the character to know that there's probably like a million other Joys doing their own thing with other owners, because we're not focusing on those. We never see another Joy. We only focus on that one. So regardless of the fact that she's a piece of technology, we're meant to relate to her and to see the world partly through that character's eyes. And so it doesn't make anything that happens to her less important, and it doesn't make the fact that she plays like a pivotal role in being Kay's consciousness, that doesn't make her any less important. It's just the confines of that world that we're given. And it's I've heard recently this saying that being creative within like confines and parameters is where like real creativity comes out. A lot of interesting things happen when you like give yourself a limit and then try to work within it. Giving Joy, the character, the limit of like, you're just a piece of technology here to serve Kay, creates a lot more opportunity for us to dive into like, okay, so what exactly does that mean for her as a character, as a human? She's just there to serve him as a piece of technology, but as a character, there's so much more to dive into because of like, how does that affect who she is as a person, you know?
Yeah, I think something that's kind of swaying my thoughts on it too is like, okay, so she is like a program that is designed to fit the user. So she is whatever he wants. But what he wants is a real companion. So she kind of becomes a real person because that's what he wants.
Cool.
So he like through genuinely loving her allows her to find herself. Like he doesn't want her to just be a fuckbot.
Exactly.
You know?
So he almost like gives her a soul by loving her and wanting her to have
They
one.
give each other a soul.
Yeah,
because
I
you know
believe that.
he's told he doesn't have a soul, and then he goes home and spends his night talking to this woman. She's like, and like someone without a soul wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
He craves this intimacy,
And I think
and
the no soul thing doesn't exist on the fact that like the replicants are all so emotional. Like it's interesting that they're cinematically shown like more emotional than the real humans that we even see.
Totally.
It seems like the real humans are
human
filled
than
with
human.
hate and greed and and then the replicants are just like heartbroken and they're sad and they're tears in the rain, you know?
I mean, they're like, yeah, I think that is, yeah, like I'm with you. You swayed me.
It's just kind of like Kay's relationship with Madam. Like, yeah, she wants him to just like, it's just so ironic because they're so like, she's so blinded to the fact that it's like, this guy has emotions actually. He has a soul. And the humans are just like, nope, you don't have a soul. You're just
it's
below
like what
me.
people did to slaves.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so interesting.
And
and it's also interesting because what is the model of Kay? Is he Nexus?
He's 9.
Nine?
Nexus 9.
So would Love be a Nexus 9 as well?
Nexus is a Nexus 9.
Nexus 9, yeah. So it's interesting because like the Nexus 9s are supposed to just like obey, but it's funny during that scene when Jared Leto kills that new
The prototype.
prototype who like falls through the ceiling and then he like slashes her stomach because she can't give birth, and then you see Love crying, but then the Jared Leto's little cameras like follow her and he can see her crying.
Yeah, he's watching her.
Yeah, he knows she's crying. So it's just interesting. It's like they say that they're all obeying, but then they also know that they're super emotional beings.
They're trying to like beat the obedience out of them. It's almost like when they create a replicant, that replicant is just like a free soul, and then they have to like morph them.
Yeah,
into
just like
something.
a real person, basically.
Yeah.
Like as if they were literally real people that you had to morph into believing that they're androids and that don't have souls.
Because the
even though they
thing
do.
that's cool about the Nexus 9s is that they have, they have like an open lifespan, like the Nexus 8s, and they also are implanted with memories like the Nexus 7s, which the Nexus 6s weren't. But Rachel was implanted. She was like the first one to be implanted with a real person's memories. Like to be, which is what, because they like in the first one they talk about how that's what kind of gives them something to connect to understand their emotions is their memories. So that's like a root. It's like an anchor, or like roots, like an anchor, like a something. But then these Nexus 9s are told those aren't true.
Yeah.
So it's like a confusing thing. Like they're told, you're fake. We gave you these memories, but they're not true. But maybe what Wallace has done is used those memories to control them. Kind of.
Like picking memories.
Use their emotions to control them.
Yeah.
Like to brainwash them, basically.
It's sort of this interesting discussion. I've heard a lot in a world where AI was a real thing, like artificial intelligence would be impossible to actually control, because the second something can think for itself, especially something with connection to like the technological world, it would be able to outthink anything we could do to control it. So once you create something that is self-sufficient, even as the creator, you no longer can control it. It is its own controller. So I think what Wallace is doing is he's understanding of that, and so he's realized the only way to control these replicants is how you would control a human, emotional manipulation. So in a way, there are completely no different than a human.
Yeah.
The only difference is that they were created by Wallace as compared to some sort of like other higher power, who knows what that might be.
Yeah.
I agree.
But at the end of the day, they are no different, which it's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And I think
I love that.
it speaks to how he views that scene with Wallace and that thing. She's a woman. Sorry. But with the new lady who's born, and then he says, she's barren, and kills her.
Yeah.
And it just shows his complete disregard for their life. Like he doesn't view them as human, or if he does, he doesn't care. Like he only wants them for their purpose. And I think it's an interesting juxtaposition to Tyrell in the first one, who I think like he loves them. Like he really, mind you, he doesn't make, they're slaves, but to make Rachel able to reproduce, I guess I just get the vibe that he has this like affection for his creation, whether or not it's right, but he does care about them.
It's sort of like Wallace is like a jaded version of Tyrell, because like Tyrell is like, he's like enslaving them, but he's also like in a sick way sort of like, these are my children.
He loves
but then
them.
Wallace is just like, these are expendable, I'm just trying to move on and make the next best one. You know, he's sort of like the same sort of creator figure, but without any of that like kind of glossy veneer of like, I'm doing this for love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's sort of just doing it because he can, because I think he's sort of high on his own God supply,
Yeah.
which is why Jared Leto was a great casting choice.
It was.
Let's talk about Jared Leto.
Yeah, let's
Austin.
go off. So originally, Ridley Scott had David Bowie in mind for the character of Neander Wallace, and I think that would have been really cool. Unfortunately, he passed away, and we got Jared Leto. And I mean, he's fine in the movie. He's fine. I guess it's me bringing my personal thing in. I just like get frustrated with like him putting in contacts and being blind and like instead of like acting, it's just so like it works because he's only in 2 scenes of the movie, but man, do those 2 scenes pull me out of the movie.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
you're aware of what's going on behind the scenes.
Because I'm just watching him go, millions more, we will create trillions more. Like, I'm so like,
You're my child.
like I just, yeah. it's-
Angel has fallen from the sky.
Like it's so this is my problem with Neander Wallace and with Jared Leto. His performance. And it might be the writing, it might be directing, it might be everything, but in the original Blade Runner, Roy Batty we're told he's the villain, these Nexus, they're terrible, but as we learn, and by the end of the movie, it's like holy shit, he's he's a guy who's gonna die, and like, and no one cares really. Like he's a human. To me, that's what that Tears in the Rain. He's like, I have these memories. I have feelings. I have like, I'm real, and I'm just gonna fade away because no one cares about me.
It feels like
And Neander Wallace as a villain, like I never got that moment of like understanding where he's coming from, other than because he doesn't have a conclusion really. He doesn't wrap up. He's just left as this open-ended, mustache twirling bad guy. To me, what do you guys think?
Well, I understand. He's definitely like a different character or villain altogether than Roy is.
Yes.
And he serves such a different role. Like I see him, like I was saying, this movie feels like it takes a lot of the questions from Blade Runner, and instead of re-asking them, moves on to like question like 1B. It's like the next
Doubles
stage
down.
of the question, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've seen Neander Wallace as the next step of Tyrell. Like I said in my last answer, in a way, he's sort of like Tyrell gone even more bad. And so I feel like the character doesn't necessarily have that much of an arc or really reason for what he's doing a lot of the time, but with the knowledge of like how he relates to the world and the character, I don't feel like I don't feel like what they did was wrong. I feel like they could have done more, but I don't feel like the choices they made were incorrect, because I see him as this character who's like, he's like helping to fix the world. He's like basically the golden boy of the planet. Everyone is like, he's the guy. He did everything we needed. He's fixing everything.
He said about himself, he called himself Elon Musk, if Elon Musk wasn't such an underachiever. That's what he said.
I love that. Well, like that's the thing, is like he's clearly just like, he saved the world and he knows it. He loves himself. He lives in this, like something I was reading about, he lives in like an entirely wooden home, and wood is like the most precious thing in that world.
Yeah.
And he's fucking blind. He doesn't need to live in a wooden home. Like that right there is like proof of how over the top this character is.
Well, he has his weird spermy things.
Yeah. What?
His weird floaty spermy things.
Oh, true.
The fishy things.
Yeah.
don't
But
know.
like I just get this
I like
idea
the
that
cams.
he as a character is meant to be like purposely this over exaggeration.
Extra.
Just the most extra character to
Aries
represent this like very
He's definitely an Aries.
He's definitely an Aries. No, to represent this like
It's Aries season, bitches.
like how far can consumerism take us? Like that's sort of like what he is in a way. And so almost like purposely ambiguous, because he's not meant to be just one character, but a representation of like how bad consumerism and like egotism can be, I guess.
Oh, a representation of that?
Yeah. I mean, and once again, Jared Leto as an actor is divisive because he acts kind of like Neander Wallace does in the movie. Kind of, he seems like he's super self-aggrandizing, and like he makes these decisions because he, like you were saying, he's probably blind all day on set, and it holds everyone else back, but it's because he needs it for his performance.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I get from the character. So in a way, it was great casting.
So I guess it's perfect.
True.
Yeah.
It is perfect.
It's
Do you
true.
think like Tyrell is kind of like Elon Musk, but then Wallace is kind of like evil Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
It's Aries
Something
season.
like Elon Musk. I think there is something. I think also like
That was a joke.
the character of Neander Wallace has, like, he wants to bring humans to the next stage. He wants to like break them out of existence. He wants to like expand humanity into something bigger. And I get that, but I guess maybe for me it just wasn't a relatable motivation.
Yeah.
So I was like, at no point was I like, oh, I understand why he's doing these terrible things. Whereas Tyrell was kind of doing that, but then he also got his head fucking broke. We got it concluded, and to me Tyrell was like showing that man can overstep its bounds and then it can pay for it, and he did. He paid for what he did because Roy shows up and squeezes his eyeballs.
It's a weird, that's true. It's a weird movie. Sorry, not weird movie. It's a weird move to take, like in the first movie, the villain is like purposely just like another person, somebody that like throughout the whole movie is just like a human trying to fight to stay alive because they've been handicapped by this 4-year life thing. But in this movie, the villain is this grand, larger than life threat, less personal, less real and tangible. And so I feel like it does get rid of some of the personal element, but that may have been purposeful. It may have been like they wanted it to be a bit more of like a bigger, larger than life question in a way. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What do you
And
think?
well, I think I agree. Like, I think since time has gone on and it's 2049, I feel like Tyrell just like wasn't as fucking crazy because the world just wasn't as bad, and as like the world's gotten worse, there's literally is no crops, so like Wallace motherfucker is the reason why there's food and stuff. I think it would only make sense why someone is crazy to like solve the food problem and also like create a bunch of like androids that he thinks is gonna like control, which he inevitably can't. It makes I don't know. It makes sense. I wasn't annoyed. Like, I liked his performance. I was kind of annoyed by it the first time, and second time I'm like into it. The blind thing I don't really care about. Like, yeah, I agree with Autumn. Like, it's perfect casting then if he's gonna do something as egotistical as that. But I thought it worked, and yeah.
I'm curious because there was the first cut of this movie was over 4 hours long.
Wow.
And they were thinking about cutting it and putting it out as 2 movies because apparently they could stand alone. But then they decided to just cut it down. And I'm really curious if there was more to explore in his character that got cut out. It felt a little like there was some, you know,
Yeah.
I think
I
I
feel that.
maybe would have been less cause
Jarring, like less
Yeah,
jarring.
he just kind of like comes in and out and then comes back. And then it's not really wrapped up. And maybe they were leaving it open-ended intentionally.
It's interesting that like nothing gets wrapped up in the world, whereas like in the first one, like yeah, Tyrell dies, but in this one, like he's just still going.
Yeah, Tyrell dies.
No,
Roy
there's no
dies,
difference, and he
all
probably
the replicants die, and Deckard and them.
And then isn't he gonna
never leave.
find like won't he end up just finding Deckard's daughter since he went to him? Like wouldn't he track Deckard down basically and take the daughter and kill her, right?
Yeah,
Probably?
she seems like she's like under surveillance. She's not leaving that room
Exactly,
anytime soon.
yeah. So I
that's what
feel
was thinking,
like
how is she gonna get out?
or maybe she doesn't get out, maybe he just goes and sees her and then walks away and then everything goes back to how it was anyways. Like there was no point.
It's interesting to hear it was 4 hours and they cut it down because then that makes me reevaluate my own previous answer because then it may not have been purposely ambiguous. It may have been just a happenstance of like, well, he's maybe the one of the least important characters in terms of the
it's true.
consistent plot. So we'll just cut out half of his scenes, which is what happened in Suicide Squad with him as well. So that's like a recurring theme.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely don't love him. I guess I'm just saying like I was okay with the character.
that's fair.
You know?
I think I'm just being
No, I get that.
a little fanboy.
No, I totally get it.
I have a soft
acknowledge
spot for like larger than life, like really weird characters. That's just something I've always enjoyed. So like I'm watching that and I'm just like, what are these decisions you're making? Like who are you? And
yeah,
I
you're
really
just like,
enjoy
what
it.
is this?
But in terms of like how it fits into the Blade Runner universe, I can understand how it would be kind of annoying compared to like what you get as the villain in the first movie, you know?
It is pretty extra compared to all the like it's pretty Aries compared to all the characters. I'm not gonna stop. just throwing
Blade
that
Runner Ares
We
49.
so we touched on Deckard's daughter a little bit, and so let's talk about her, like the memory thing. That's one of the cool. That's so cool. I love that, like the showing where the memories are manufactured and her little dial thing.
Very cool.
Do you guys have thoughts about that scene? I know you were talking about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of symbolism in that scene, but I don't know what any of it means. Like I'm watching this scene when it first comes on, and I'm like, there's so much being said here, but it's so ambiguous. I don't know what it's saying.
Which one?
Like the whole sequence when we first meet her, when like we were saying, we were watching it. The movie is like very dark and sad, and like there's no sunlight, rain, and then there's this really sudden shot of just beautiful trees in the sun, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then you see this woman walking around. I'm like, oh, maybe they're off world. Maybe we're finally seeing it. And then Kay pops in, and it's like breaks this hologram. You're like, oh, it was just fake. It was a memory being made, and I guess that was I'm not exactly sure exactly what they were trying to say there, but I feel like there was a lot of metaphor even just within that 5-second sequence. And then to find out that this character, who is the first ever replicant born child, is the one creating all of the memories for all of the replicants, and she's confined and trapped while all the other replicants are out free, quote unquote, living. Like there seems like there's so much being said there, but just from my one viewing, I don't fully grasp what's being said. Do you guys have any ideas?
Shit. One thing I just realized though. So Wallace is like looking for her because they want to cut her open, but she's working under him.
Yeah, she works for
But
him.
so isn't she fucking scared? Because she doesn't want to get found out, or does she not even know that she doesn't want to get found
I
out?
guess
Or no, she doesn't know. No, she doesn't even know it herself.
No, she does, I think.
So why would she work under him? Why wouldn't she keep hiding? That kind of
There's
confuses
a lot of
me.
mystery around that character. So there's things like, so that memory is implanted in Kay, right? The
Yeah.
memory of the horse.
So was the point?
furnace.
Was she trying to lead him?
Well, that's
to-
the thing is
Is that on purpose?
did she put it there?
I thought so.
Did she know that's hers? Did she only put it in him, or did she put it in a bunch of them to try and find her parents? Like,
Interesting.
Well,
like
she starts crying like she's surprised.
maybe because
She did it by accident?
so. I mean, to me, maybe that scene is like she. It's illegal to put your own memories, but maybe she's been there since she was 8, so she's been there for 20 years, I think, in this room alone. Maybe she just was like, I have this memory. I'm gonna put it out there and see if anything happens. And then this guy shows up,
and then it did happen.
and she's like, I maybe feels like responsible, like I've kind of ruined this guy's life.
Interesting.
How would she know he ruined? Because she knows he thinks that
I mean,
he was
that scene
born.
when she goes, is this real? And she's like, he's figuring it out and doing what I.
How
what
would
I
she know
planned,
she's born though?
But it's at the expense of him. You know.
Well, she must know that she's.
How would she
what
know?
she is.
Because she was like.
Was she raised by the lady with the one eye?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was left with her, and then somehow she ended up, and she is freelance. She doesn't like work. Like Wallace doesn't control that. She's like a freelance artist.
I know, it's just like crazy.
So
like when
she
you be
somehow-
so scared because like Wallace wants to cut you up. So like, how would you?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think they set up a lot of stuff with the rebellion and.
See, I think
and
that's why I wasn't
her
happy
and-
with the film at first because I was just annoyed. I was like, okay, this rebellion thing is so random, and then this whole story with her is so like random. Like I couldn't even like attach my mind because it felt like there's so much.
Yeah.
But now I'm just like open to it and I just love it. But yeah, that was my first like complaint at first. I was like, what is all this shit? It's just being thrown at me. I don't understand. But now I like it and I want to talk about it.
Without like further discussion like we have now, it might seem like there's a lot of unfinished ideas in this movie, but I think it becomes clear when you discuss it that the unfinished ideas are like completely on purpose
Yeah.
and are meant to be ambiguous. I have a
Totally.
question for you, Austin, about the first movie.
Yes.
I heard that in one of the cuts, like the directors of the finals cut, they got rid of a happy ending.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yes.
I
So-
read the script for it this morning.
Yeah,
It's
Quinn was
ridiculous.
in the first cut of the movie. There's a pretty like Hollywood-esque ending. Quinn was reading it. Do you want to talk about it actually? Because you
Yeah,
you
so
read
there's
it,
like so basically after the scene where he's like, "Do you trust me? I trust you. I love you." Because that's the last scene, right?
Yeah.
So and then it cuts to he has a voiceover. He's like, "I knew that we were like similar." And then they're like driving like on a highway, and Ridley Scott got Stanley Kubrick to give him leftover footage from The Shining. So there's leftover footage from The Shining of like through the like hills and all the trees, like a Garden of Eden-esque thing. And then they're driving in this car and it's just so Hollywood, like driving away, the wind's like hitting their faces, and there's just like this ridiculous voiceover of Harrison Ford being like, we were in it's like, what the fuck? I was like, I thought it was a fake script. Like I read it and then I saw some footage from it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like I am so glad that they changed this movie. I'm so glad that there's a different cut because that was like ridiculous and like so Hollywood-esque and uncalled for. So thank God that 2049 wasn't Hollywoody at all, because it kind of seemed like it with Kay thinking that he's a replicant, but then the story turns on you, so it almost went Hollywood, but then it doesn't go Hollywood.
Yeah, I like
because
that
he's
misdirect.
not or not replicant. He's not the chosen one.
Okay, that's interesting because that's sort of what I imagined when they were like, yeah, Hollywood ending, happy ending that got cut out, which rightfully was a great idea because it gets, I think purposely the first movie leaves somewhat open-endedly and lets you know like, yeah, maybe this individual story's wrapped up, but the world's still screwed up. There's gonna be a lot of other ridiculous, horrible things that happen because even though the story that we're presented with feels really grand and like a comment on a lot of things, in the actual state of what's happening in the world, apart from Tyrell dying, it doesn't really change much. You know what I mean? Like, it's mainly just a story about Deckard and Roy having this confrontation. Once Roy dies, the world around them isn't altered that much by it. You know what I mean?
But he
just like
Deckard
Kay
is,
dying,
right?
like it doesn't matter that Kay dies. So I feel like the movie ends up in such a sad note because like nothing changes and the Earth is still dying and everything's like really awful.
And that's perfect for these movies.
Exactly. So the
Harrison Ford
Hollywood
got to
ending
see
would have
his
been so messed up because it's like there is no happy ending to this world,
which
to
I
this
like.
universe.
So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Deckard. I
Yeah,
think.
let's talk about Deckard.
So, I mean, the age-old Blade Runner question: is Deckard a replicant? What do you think?
I think that just the age-old question sums up the idea of the film So I think I would be surprised talking to
Schrodinger's
someone.
replicant?
I would be surprised talking to someone that was just like, nope, he's not. Because like at the end of the day, I think it doesn't matter because they have souls. I think he is, because obviously Ridley Scott says he is, and he has the dreams of the unicorn. But I think the dreaming is also like, well, in this world, animals don't exist anymore. The ones that are real are glorified, and they don't even have them. They can't even afford to get them. They don't even know if they can get them. And like, what is the difference between a human dreaming about a unicorn and an android, or fucking, I keep calling them androids, a replicant. So I just think, of course he is, and it's just an interesting conversation.
Yeah. What do you think?
Did you know, Autumn? Like, what did you think?
When I was watching it, I didn't know.
So what did you think?
It was interesting information for me because watching the first one and then seeing you guys and watching the second one with you, I heard only that theory about Deckard being a replicant after the first one before watching the second one. So it gave me like new information going into the second one that I didn't have watching the first one. Watching the first one, I thought and assumed he was human, and it didn't, like you said, it didn't really change my perception of the story to hear that he might not have been, because it's that ambiguity of it doesn't matter that is sort of the plot of the movie. So to know that he probably is, but they never specifically say it, to me just adds to the depth of the message, which I'm happy about. And the fact that Ridley Scott said he is, it's like, cool, that's gospel, because you're the writer of the movie. So I assume that's the choice you think is the best choice for the viewer to be aware of. In the second movie, I experienced this thing where I couldn't tell who was a replicant. And I think that, once again, took what I liked about the first movie and furthered it. In the first movie, it's pretty cut and dry who a replicant is, apart from Deckard. In the second movie, who knows? I thought everyone was a replicant. And that... It's
like every single person
right?
movie made, Denis Villeneuve is a replicant.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And I liked that about it, because then I was like, 30 years later, it makes sense that there's more and more and more replicants who are all, at this point, so like used to living as a replicant that they're pretty much just human, and like that's just the world now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you said it, and I think that's kind of where I'm falling on it. Does it matter? And I don't think it does. I think that's the thing, is that you can pick one. It's cool if he is, because then you're watching like this really human story about, like, then Kay's replicant, he is, Rachel is, Mariette is, Roy is, Joy is, his daughter.
Basically all
every
who
person,
isn't?
everyone,
Yeah,
except for Wallace, Tyrell, and the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it.
So it's just the authority figures that aren't?
Yeah, it's
which is so
authority.
interesting. It just, I feel like, do you guys think that a world with replicants, like say in this universe, if humans started actually dying, they actually overthrow, do you think the world would be a better place?
Oh, it's tough, because once again, like, replicants are pretty much humans, so I don't think it'd be any better.
No, but I think that the replicants, but I said before, like, I think the replicants are a little bit, like, they seem more emotional, and they seem more, like, receptive to pain. They seem like, I don't know, they just seem like they have, like, more of a heart. I know that there's no difference, but it just seems like because they're so oppressed and because they're in so much pain, they also have, like, a, I don't know, like a...
If we were to look at the cycles of life, what would happen would be the replicants would take over and everything would be amazing for a while.
And then they would...
Because they would be coming from this place of, like, we know how horrible it was to be oppressed, and then eventually they'd become the oppressors, and something else would take over.
But I think that's like...
But would they, though, if
no,
they had...
I don't think it would. In what Ridley Scott and Denis have done, no.
Yeah.
Because we see Mackenzie Davis's character, Mariette, literally say, oh, you don't like real girls, and she's, like, negative towards holograms. She's prejudiced against them.
So you're saying
replicants are just prejudiced to the next thing, and everyone it continues that, like, they are human and humans are flawed.
No,
and
you're
humans
right.
don't like the other.
You're right,
and that will never go away.
You're right.
And
well, that's the conversation we were having. That was the point I was trying to get across. Because remember, we had this conversation, and you said, "Well, no, if they're artificial intelligence, they would have access to all information, so they would see no point of prejudice." But I guess that's a different conversation.
That's different
like,
than this.
No, I know, because this is specifically they're just
because
human.
replicants are human, pretty much. Yeah.
No, I get that. I thought I'd bring that up.
I get the idea that the replicants aren't like linked to the World Wide Web. They're not like computer people.
No,
they're just people that run off of like a life force that was created.
Yeah.
which is interesting. I feel like the movie would be very different if they were like
It
computer
would be,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking about iRobot during this conversation, which is like a weird parallel, but just it
Gotta
keeps
watch
popping in
that.
my head. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
It's
I
okay.
watch it. Yeah, it's okay.
It's based off like a really good book, and then it's like an action movie version starring Will Smith.
Cool.
So
Oh shit! I was thinking of fucking Mr. Robot.
Oh,
wait, yeah. I was like, that's not a movie.
No. Yeah, I think the whole thing with. I think that's what I do like about the holograms too. Going back to Joy a little bit and like the prejudices, we really see that replicants are human, and not just because they're emotional, but because they're also kind of can
Like
be
flawed,
shitty as well.
Flawed, right?
And
No,
I
you're
think
right.
that's a really cool thing to pepper in, because it just like builds it more and like makes it more. I just love that how she's like how like Mackenzie Davis and Joy have this like weird
Yeah, like competition
thing, and like it's just it is cool. Like there's just like
well, that's what I
cool
think makes
peppering in.
her so human. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because he's not even there,
Yeah,
and she's still
and she's still like,
alive and doing
but
things.
I think she says, "I'm done with you."
Yeah, it's just really interesting.
I just like was reminded of my favorite visual scene was the crazy like hologram over a real person.
Oh, sex scene, so cool.
That was crazy cool. Like it felt like Mandy levels of trippy because you couldn't tell whose body was whose, and the way that like the hands were like moving and like going into each other and all like
Interlinked.
it was just so interlinked. It was
Interlinked.
so beautiful, and I hadn't ever really seen anything like that. All the more reason why this movie should have won Best Cinematography.
Have you seen Her?
It's been a long time.
So there's that scene where it's kind of similar, but with like an earpiece.
Yeah,
instead
but
of
not with Holly.
But
Yeah.
where like someone comes out like a replacement
Yeah.
prostitute.
Yeah, I
kinda comes
remember
over
that
as
scene.
Right.
which is a cool like kind of sci-fi trope, I guess it's becoming. Like
VR porn.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like.
No, yeah.
But it is a cool. I think it's so cool. I think it's cool too but there is like this like thing. This is me like being a freaking nerd and reading super into stuff, but like there's the shot from the back of his head when you see the two hands come around, and Mackenzie Davis's hands are like doing stuff and caressing him and like feeling, whereas Joy's aren't. They're just because she doesn't know what touch is like. She doesn't know how to do it's just an interesting thing of like that the physical you can I don't know, but it just like stuck to me out to me. I was like, that's just like an interesting thing that she doesn't really like process to like rub the back of rub your
Yeah.
hair,
'Cause she's
like,
never known
because
to
she's
do
never
it.
touched hair, and I don't know.
What you're
Being a
experiencing
nerd.
right now is like what I was saying earlier about there's so many things in this movie where I feel something strongly. I don't know how to word what I learned.
I feel that.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I
My head
learned
feels
something.
weird.
Like this movie had a lot to say, and I heard it. It said it, but then I'm like, what do I do with it? Like I took it in. It's seared into my brain, but I don't know what it means yet. And I feel like, well, that kind of comes up to like. That's what this podcast is kind of about, is like a lot of the times movies will do things like that. They'll show you things and you need to discuss it with people and to like think about it. Every time I watch a movie now, I immediately look at like breakdowns of that film because I'm curious. I don't want my movie viewing experience to just be like my first glance, because I think every movie has so much more to say than just what you get in the first glance. You know what I mean?
true.
You know?
Yeah.
It feels like I need to like rewatch every movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I just
Because you're
yeah.
always changing too.
exactly.
I mean, that's I touched on it at the beginning, but that's something like personally with this film is cool to me, is because I didn't like it when I watched it, and I don't usually not like films like
That's
like
how
the
I
way
feel about
did.
the first one.
But then it was like my own ego being annoyed that and then I rewatched it and loved it. But if I didn't rewatch it and like talk about it, I would just be walking around the world right now not liking this movie.
And you wouldn't have picked to
And
do
now I'm
the
sitting
podcast.
here wearing
yeah.
a t-shirt.
Yeah, he's wearing
with
the
Ryan
Blade
Gosling
Runner
on it.
29 t-shirt. Such a little fanboy. It's so cute.
Yeah, I think it's just like, but yeah, like
Yeah.
if there weren't
That's great.
anyway.
It's a good note to end on.
I think the
Not
best
to
note
try
to
and-
end on
yeah.
would be to
Oh, yeah.
say that I just think Ryan Gosling is amazing.
He's
I think
just-
he's one of my favorite leading men of our generation.
I think he is.
He's a beautiful soul.
He is. I was thinking about that while watching this movie. He is like one of the best American actors. Mr. Gosling, right now, if you're listening. But he's amazing, but he's got Brad Pitt syndrome where he's super fucking attractive and people write him off as the guy from The Notebook.
Yeah.
But I feel like I said this to people. I was talking about it and I was like, I think Ryan Gosling's like one of my favorite actors. And I'm like, really? But like, look at his career. He has like the most interesting career ever. Like he was in like The Nice Guys, Blade Runner, La La Land,
First Man.
Like he does, like, I mean, the list goes on, but he does. I mean, but then Blue Valentine, he does.
Oh, Blue Valentine is probably one of my
Like,
favorites. Of
he
his.
does
Oh,
these-
fucking Place Me on the Pines.
Yeah.
Oh, he's done some crazy shit.
He does weird movies, and he's
Oh, Drive, yeah.
Drive.
Oh, and what's Emma Stone and
Crazy Stupid Love.
Crazy
Like
Stupid Love, yeah, just
such a diverse
as fuck.
catalog.
And
like,
just his eyes break my heart because he has to be like the kindest person. I swear to
yeah.
God, like just watching
He's
him
gotta
talk,
he's a puppy dog.
he's a fucking puppy dog. It kills me. Look at that face. Look at that face,
It's like
Beach.
Anthony level cute.
Oh,
Here's the thing: is like when you said Brad Pitt syndrome, that was like such a perfect description of Ryan Gosling because like there is this
so
weird
hot.
this
So
weird
cute.
thing where like as a man, if you say like Ryan Gosling's one of my favorite actors, people are like, why? He's only in rom-coms, but he's not. He's in so many
so
things.
true, so
and as a
true.
woman, if you say Ryan Gosling's one of your favorite actors, people are like, it's because he's hot. But he's actually like on the forefront of
true.
amazing cinema. He's in so many great movies.
so true.
yeah. And so is Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt is an amazing actor.
Right?
And nobody they don't get the credit that like a Joaquin Phoenix does, and because he's not like a character actor, he's like he's like a character actor in a leading man body, and it's perfect for
Very
this movie.
true.
Like playing, I mean, if I was gonna produce a replicant, I would make it look like Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
True that.
You know?
True that.
Such a sexy motherfucker.
Oh,
I mean,
love
talking
him.
about sexy motherfuckers, Harrison Ford is like
Ah,
so
talk about your
so amazing.
Say what you said about his bod.
So I love Harrison Ford's body. No,
In
but-
2049?
Yes. No, in the original, but like I think that he is just like the pinnacle of like coolness in the first Blade Runner. Mm-hmm. He's just so cool.
You
and
said
so,
he had the like ideal body.
ideal male body. He does. He's cool. He looks like he's like a carpenter. Like he's not like toned. He's got like a carpenter chest hair, and he looks like fucking cool. And I was like, I want to look like that. I never will.
Harrison Ford has the everyman appeal where like he's not so
Totally.
handsome that you're just like, oh, I could never be Harrison Ford. He's handsome but in like a normal way, and he's like fit in like a natural way, not in like a movie star fit. You know,
true.
he has that appeal where he's like he's normal, but he's the best type of normal, you know?
Yeah, he doesn't need to be like ripped to be cool.
Yeah.
He's just cool. And even that's another thing though that I really appreciate about this movie is that because Harrison Ford can sometimes like phone it in,
Yeah.
especially in his older age, because he didn't need to show up and give a really good performance in this movie,
Yeah.
and he did. And I just
really good. My best moment when he sees Rachel.
yeah like
Fucking tears.
yeah, and he's like and he said he's like I know
Tears.
what-
Good acting.
when he's
Sorry.
like, I know what's real, and I just love it. I think, I mean, I do like that he looks like he just showed up in a gray T-shirt and was like, no, I'm gonna wear this. Like, that's but whatever. It's Harrison Ford, but I just love that he showed up, and it just like as like a fan of the original, I like seeing the difference between like he's like a good fucking actor. I think he gets this maybe like kind of put in a box of like Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, like this like like he's a leading man, Jack Ryan.
He gets thrown into like the like franchise icon.
But he is like a super good actor.
Yeah.
He's like Ryan Gos.
Yeah.
He's
like
this
the gauze.
and he
that
still
gauze
is, and
on
he's
me.
still got it. I think he's got like
Gauze tape.
this ease to him that's just amazing.
I have a
true.
cut. I need some gauze.
And I love the dog in this. The
dog.
the dog. But the dog that looks exactly like Harrison Ford
True. Great casting.
is perfect.
Really quick question just to finish this off. Do you think it would have been a more impactful reveal if we'd never known Harrison Ford was in the movie until we find him?
Yeah.
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 But for
But-
marketing, they had to put him there.
But
Yeah.
this movie does a good job.
That would have
of,
been
like,
crazy. Can you imagine not knowing?
Right?
Even watching this
So
movie,
cool.
I've seen it like 3 times now, maybe 4 times. Even watching it like again, halfway through, I was like, oh, we haven't even gotten to Deckard yet.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, he's in this movie.
It's a journey.
He doesn't come in for like an hour 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's like we're a while into the movie. I'm like, we haven't even gotten to look for him yet, and I liked that. I liked that it wasn't like the way it was marketed. Like the actual synopsis on IMDb is like Officer K goes to find Rick Deckard to fix an old problem, and I was like, that's the plot, but that wasn't the plot.
Officer K.
That's not how it was written. But they find him like almost like long past halfway, which is great. I liked that.
Yeah,
Another
he
subverting
shows up
expectations.
Yeah. Sweet.
Loved it.
Any final closing thoughts? I think we kind of touched it all.
Love that goss.
Will there be a sequel?
Oh, this was my question. I was when I was walking, kind of tied into that. So I'm gonna throw it to you guys.
Ooh.
Would you prefer to see a sequel film or some sort of television show based in this universe?
Oh. So I have an immediate answer for this. Because my thing with television remakes of things that have already been movies is the budget goes down massively, and it usually bothers me. Because when you've established a visual style or like a world that looks and feels a certain way with this like big budget, like 2049, I wouldn't want to watch a Blade Runner that didn't have that cinematography and that level of like of commitment to world building. They just naturally would have a smaller budget. So like while the stories would be like more available, I kind of feel like it would take away from, it would almost like take it out of this sort of like masterpiece status and be like, this is a franchise property. Does that make sense?
That's fair. But I'm curious to see what Amazon does with Lord of the Rings.
I thought you were about to say, I'm surprised to see what Amazon is going to do with it because there's a TV series.
Yeah,
Bitches. You actually didn't know. Thought I'd fucking spring it on you.
So would you prefer to see like a a film continuation and keep it, or nothing, or just end it?
I mean, I feel like there's more to say and do, but I don't know what that is. You know what I mean?
Depends what the story is, kind of?
Yeah. Like
I wonder if they could pull it off, you know?
like a Blade Runner 2078. I'd be interested.
Yeah.
What will the world be like? We don't know.
I think 2049 was like best case scenario for a Blade Runner sequel.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And I think I don't know if I'd want to see a continuation in films, but I think it's a cool universe to see. Like, I think you could do a TV series in the universe and not call it like Blade Runner.
Yeah.
You know, like have like the replicants and stuff. Like, see maybe like, because they talk about like replicant rebellions and stuff. What if you were to see that take place or like go off world? Like,
I was just gonna say
explore that universe.
An off-world TV show would be interesting
About like replicant rebellion.
Yeah,
kind of
like
thing?
what's going on in the new like. What is it, like a colonization?
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing about that is if they do it really well, then it's amazing, all this extra lore. But if they do it poorly, it's not canon. It never happened in the movies. You know,
yeah,
like it's a good scapegoat.
Yeah, I think I can see them doing it, or actually probably not, because neither of the movies actually like did well. Like this movie didn't do very well.
But I feel like probably in a couple years it's going to be known as like a masterpiece,
classic.
just like Blade Runner, probably. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But
I'm curious to see how it
I feel like
ages,
I feel like people will prefer it as time goes on. Like it's just, I don't know how someone could like walk away from this film and think it's a bad film.
Rutger Hauer doesn't like
And
it.
I also will say that I would be curious about a film, but I'm fine with them ending it. Definitely wouldn't be down for a series. But very curious like what they would do with it in the future.
I think like we were saying, the open-endedness allows
like, I feel
easy opportunity to make another movie.
But also, would you just keep it open-ended and not, you know?
That's the thing, is
the
like it
idea of
wouldn't be a problem to leave it open-ended. It wouldn't be a problem to do another movie, but you would have to wait long enough to make sure you have a lot to say and do. What I think they did well waiting so long before making 2049 was that, like, I'm sure it just gave them a lot of time to ruminate on, like, what's the actual progression. I'd be happy to wait 20 years and get another sequel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than rushing like a 5-year from now sequel.
Oh, totally.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's if it's gonna happen, I want it in 30 years.
Yeah, like a long time from now.
Or, you know, and I think have a new
And Kay is old in that one.
just have an old Goss.
Yeah.
What is he gonna look like? What a silver fox he's gonna be.
Yes.
Who's an up and coming child actor? Tom Holland?
Maybe.
He's
I don't
20.
know.
I was joking.
Yeah, so true. What a child.
So should we flip a coin?
Yeah, we should. Does anyone have a
Oh,
coin?
God.
Nope.
I'll find one.
You two can rock, paper, scissors over it.
Oh, God.
Do you have anything in mind, Quinnifer?
No.
So, let us know what you think about 2049 down below. I'm gonna
Down below
filibuster
where?
in the comment section down below.
Oh, okay, true.
Or to the side or wherever the bar is.
Flip it because it's between us.
True that.
Yeah, give me
God,
that
I gotta
coin.
Think of something. Okay.
All right, you have 5 seconds.
Oh fuck. Okay, wait. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Also, sci-fi is off limits because we just did. Sci-fi.
Yeah.
You're doing heads?
The coin has been flipped.
Okay. One sec.
Did you say heads, Quinn?
Yeah, I said heads, but give me a second. Okay.
Welcome to coin flipping, a podcast where we
Fuck,
flip coins.
We don't film the
The
show.
audio only experience. Maybe I can get some ASMR of me flipping a coin.
Yeah, do it. Get some ASMR.
And the winner is. Did you say who said heads?
I said heads.
Okay. It's tails.
Oh, it's
Okay.
tails. Okay, then I'm gonna go with something very different than Blade Runner. Okay, have you guys seen mid-90s?
Oh my
Yes.
God, I was thinking weird.
Because I haven't seen it.
That.
Yeah. So would that be something
Yep.
you're interested in?
Let's do it. Mid-90s.
Yeah,
do
let's
it.
do mid-90s.
Loved
Mid-90s.
mid-90s.
What I gather, it's short and bright and fun.
It's
So-
fun.
Yeah,
Cool.
Let's do it.
sweet.
Mid 90s. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, for Family Movie Night, my name is Austin.
My name is Quinn.
I'm Autumn.
And where can the people find you?
They can find me on the Instagram application, Quinn Grayson.
North Vancouver.
Perfect. And you can find me
Last time.
just anywhere where you can get information.